This part of Chapter 2 will discuss alimony. All right. In the state of Indiana, there is technically no alimony, but there is something called spousal support, okay, which technically I guess could be considered the same thing. When a person has to pay their former spouse a payment, all right, that payment could be considered alimony, it could be considered child support, or it could be considered both. All right, if the payment is strictly alimony, all right, let's go back and take a look at page 10 in our book. All right, remember our 1040. All right, and it'll show you there that on the first page of the 1040, alrighty, on line 11, that it says alimony received. All right, and so any alimony that is received by the former spouse has to be included as income on Form 1040. There is no separate, form for it. You just plunk the amount on Form 1040. All right, and then the payer. Okay, also, if you look down on line 31A and 31B, the payer includes their ex-spouse's social security number and the amount that they paid them. Okay, now again, this has to be alimony. All right, okay, now how do we know it's alimony? Well, number one, it's ordered by the court. Okay, all right. I've seen situations where, for example, a husband would pay his ex-wife, he'd give her the car or something like that, and it wasn't court ordered. And so then the husband wanted to take a deduction for it as alimony paid, and I told him no. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, well, one, it has to be court ordered. Two, it has to be in cash. And, and then I told him, well, I'm sorry, but you're out of luck, but this is a gift, and you don't get to deduct it, and your former spouse does not have to claim it as income. So therefore, how do we know it's alimony? Well, if you go to the top of page 2-9, okay, it'll tell you at the top of the page what is considered alimony. All right, it says the payments have to be received in cash by the former spouse, so it can't be paid to somebody else. The payments have to be made under a decree of divorce or some kind of separate maintenance agreement. All right, the payer has no liability to make payments after the death of the former spouse. Okay, the payments cannot be designated as anything other than alimony. All right, and they can't be members of the same household. Okay. Now, something that I may throw at you in a quiz, maybe on a test, all right, is if the payment includes both alimony and child support. Okay, child support is never claimed by the recipient and is never deducted by the payer. Okay, I have had a few, usually it's the dad, who pays child support and then comes to me and goes, can I deduct this? And I said, no. And they're like, well, why not? And I said, well, if you were still happily married and raising your children, you wouldn't be able to deduct their normal daily expenses on your tax return, so why do you think you can deduct child support? And they're like, oh, okay. So, child support is always a non-issue when it comes to tax returns. Okay, so there's an example on page 2-9 you should review. There's actually a would you believe section on page 2-9, which is not all that surprising. Okay, and like I said, you very rarely will see any alimony issues in the state of Indiana, but remember, this is a federal law, and you could be facing this in Michigan or some other state where alimony is considered to be quite common.